Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to the presentation session 2 on International Conference on Business, Management, Social and Economical Advancements organized by Research Culture Society and Management Institute, Warsaw University of Life Science from Poland. So, for the presentation session 2, let me introduce you all to the session chairpersons. The first session chairperson is Dr. Conrad, who is adjunct professor at Management Institute of Warsaw University of Life Sciences. As a part of second session chairperson, we have Dr. Shovana Chaudhary, head and program coordinator of Arts and Commerce programs at Amity University, Ranchi, in India. As a part of third session chairperson, we have Dr. Harmeet Kaur, Dean and the Faculty of Management Commerce at Jharkhand Rai University in India. The fourth session chairperson we have is Dr. Aarti Gaur, who is an associate professor and a chairperson at Department of Business Administration at Devilal University, Haryana. We welcome all the session chairpersons.
So I want to share my screen.
Everyone, myself Stuti Desai. I am research scholar from Rai University, Ahmedabad, and I am doing PhD under the guidance of Dr. Chinmay Janardhan Bhatt. My research paper topic is customer satisfaction towards e-banking services in the digital era, a study of selected public sector banks of South Gujarat region. I'm going to introduction. Today, most of the customers are turning to do digital banking transactions, but in India, still there is a big gap between e-banking users at the rural and urban levels, especially in remote areas of India. Very few public sector banks are established. But the branch expansion of private sector banks at the village level is very low. Lack of literacy in remote areas leads to lack of awareness about the usage of e-banking services. They still have to rely on public sector banking services. Therefore, there is a big difference in the opinions of users of e-banking services of public and private sector banks and their level of satisfaction. For this study purpose, State Bank of India, Bank of India and Corporation Bank has been selected as a public sector bank of South Gujarat region. I move on to research methodology. Sample size and sampling method. State Bank of India and Corporation Bank has been selected to take an opinion of e-banking users of these banks of South Gujarat region. From each bank, we have selected 30 respondents and total 90 respondents among the 7 districts of South Gujarat except Dang district. Total 570 customers have been selected from South Gujarat by using stratified random sampling method. Primary data has been collected through pre-designed questionnaire for data collection, and for the data analysis, descriptive analysis has been done. Objective of the study: to know customer satisfaction towards e-banking services provided by selected public sector banks of South Gujarat. Limitation of this study: Dang district has only State Bank of India as a public sector bank. Any other public sector bank has not been established in this district except other district of South Gujarat region. Data analysis and interpretation. Here we have covered 14 parameters for customer satisfaction towards e-banking services. First of all, the quickness of card delivery. Chart shows that around 49% customers are satisfied with the quickness of card delivery service, whereas 23.5% customers are highly satisfied. Moreover, only 5.8% customers are highly dissatisfied with the service. Second chart shows that the availability of currency shows the chart shows that 50.7% customers are satisfied with the availability of currency, whereas 20% customers are extremely satisfied with the service. Moreover, 13% customers are neutral with their opinion, and 12.6% customers are dissatisfied with the service. Chart number 3 shows that around 50% customers are highly satisfied with the convenience of bank's location. Very few, around 9% customers are opined that banks are not conveniently located. Chart number shows that 45.1% customers are satisfied uh, with satisfied with the bank service about capacity building and awareness, whereas around 37% customers are extremely satisfied with this service. Moreover, 4% customers are dissatisfied, and around 4% customers are highly dissatisfied with this service. Chart number 5 shows that around 52% customers are satisfied with the service of account information and balance inquiry, whereas around 43% customers are neutral with their opinion. Moreover, around 3% customers are equally highly satisfied and highly dissatisfied with this service. Chart number 6 indicates that 53.5% customers are neutral about statement request service, whereas around 23% customers are satisfied with this service. Moreover, around 20% customers are highly satisfied with this service. Chart number 7 shows that around 44% customers are satisfied with the clear instruction service of the bank, whereas 20.7% customers are highly satisfied with this service, and around 19% customers are dissatisfied with this service. This chart shows that around 38% customers are satisfied with the service of information about products and services, whereas around 19% customers are equally highly satisfied and dissatisfied with this service. This chart shows that 39.8% customers are satisfied with the service of online directions for new users, whereas around 20% customers are highly satisfied with this service, and around 20% customers are dissatisfied. Chart number 10 shows that 40% customers are satisfied with the service of stop payment of check, whereas around 28% customers are highly satisfied. Moreover, only around 3% customers are highly dissatisfied with this service. Chart 11 shows that around 40% customers are satisfied with the service of mobile number updation, whereas around 22% customers are dissatisfied with this service. Moreover, 21.2% customers are highly satisfied with this service. This chart shows that around 48% customers are satisfied with the service of information on usage of ATM, internet banking, and mobile banking, whereas 23.7% customers are highly satisfied with this service, and 17.2% customers are dissatisfied with this service. Chart number 13 shows that around 36% customers are satisfied with the service of regeneration of internet banking password, whereas 21.1% customers are dissatisfied with this service. Moreover, around 20% customers are extremely satisfied with this service. And last, number 14 chart indicates that around 28% customers are dissatisfied with the service of cashback on e-payment, whereas around 27% customers are satisfied with this service. Moreover, around 18% customers are highly dissatisfied with this service. conclusion, the study concludes that the e-banking users of South Gujarat are satisfied with the e-banking services, including ATM, internet banking, mobile banking, and telephone banking, which were provided by their public sector banks. But still, these banks need to make more efforts in the field of digital banking to provide better services to the customers for achieve their high satisfaction level. Public sector banks in India are not committed to serve their customers in better way. Especially in remote area, we can see a lack of awareness among customers towards e-banking services and also a network problem, whereas private sector banks provide better services to their customers. So this is my presentation. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much, Spruti. If anyone have any queries, then they may ask to continue.
Yes, I have a query, madam. May I?
Yeah,
Morning. It is a really great pleasure to have with you, ma'am. I'm Dr. V. Durga Prasad, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, this University Postgraduate College, Secunderabad Osmania University, Telangana, India. So my topic is life insurance services, policyholder satisfaction with regards to services rendered by LIC agents. So the introduction part, if you see, that insurance is a basic form of a risk management and which is provides a protect against the any possible losses, is it a life or physical assets, and it is also give some risk bearing management in the future. So what is going to be happen in the future, nobody is going to be expect. So insurance is important in everybody's life actually. So how it is going to be effect on the policy holders, and how the agents are going to be influence the consumers is going to be studied in this. So here assets have some economic value, and it is already attached with that, and there is also possibility that these assets may get damaged, destroyed, and different things happen to the assets and all. Also the life is also we can expect in the future. So the different assets are exposing to the different types of risks, and we cannot expect which type of risk we are going to be. For example, that is a risk, the fire or the human exposed to risks, some accident and death and whatnot. The different risk is going to be happen in the future. That is only we are going to see the life insurance. So this is what we are going to see. The purpose of insurance is a method of transforming the risk is to provide economic protection against the losses it is going to be happen in the future, that we are going to be safe. So that may be incurred due to some uncertainty, predicament, and used to the disability, death of an earning family members, or economic losses. If something happened to an earner in the family, this will help us to stand by. Otherwise, we know that a lot of cases we are seeing, a lot of families are destroyed. If the earner suffered with some death or accident, if they are not having any insurance, 100% there is a problem for the family. So the events that the cause the losses may or may not occur during the operative time of the contract of the insurance, but people therefore opt for life insurance purely for the reason of uncertainties in life. Always the life is uncertain. What is going to be happen tomorrow? We don't know. Nobody expects that the COVID-19 will come, and it is hit like anything. The whole world struck with one single small virus. So life insurance gives the insured a kind of peace of mind, as he has assured to making up the loss in the event of such uncertainties in the life. So this is what a small introduction part. So review of literature, Sunita, her PhD thesis, the title is the Customer Satisfaction in Life Insurance with a special reference to women policy holders in the Tanjavur district. So here she studied on women policy holders, and she examined the preferences and factors considered by the women policy holders, what they opt for that. And while selecting an insurance agent, and the satisfaction about the performance of the agents and the level of satisfaction towards the services provided by the LIC of India, and she studied about this. And the next, Uma, in their article titled A Survey of Life Insurance Awareness, Perception And preferences observes that the majority of customers are satisfied with the policy features. So always whenever the insurance agent or insurance policy seller, if he is coming, obviously is going to be explain about the features of the LIC policies. Whenever he is explaining the policy features, and as a consumers, we have to be carefully here, because the satisfaction levels of the policy is going to be convinced by the agents. So here they concentrated on that there is a few customers are dissatisfied with the incomplete information. So many times the information is very important in every area of life. The information is asset of every business, I'm telling you. The provided to them, and the suppression of information. Sometimes the information is hidden, and sometimes the information is not given properly. It is not clear. So many things will happen. So information about the policy terms and conditions. So next slide, if I go, the UMA, we can say that UMA. After that, the Thakur, a study of the consumer behavior towards life insurance industry. So he found that some investment behavior of an individual with related to the life insurance, and also know the problems faced by them. He studied that the conducted among the investors, the policy holders in a Kolhapur district. A study revealed that the insurance advisor. So this is very important. The insurance advisor. We always in Indian culture, in India maximum, the rural or urban area, if you take the LIC agents or LIC advisor, if you see any policy person is going to come as, we are not going to give time to him, because we feel that nothing will happen. Whatever the life we are leading now, let it be. So what will be having in the future? So this must be removed from the minds of the people. This is very important, that the insurance is very important aspect and important for the life of every person. So here, if you see, a study revealed that the insurance advisor is the main influencer in the buying decision of life insurance consumers, and they dependently and largely on the insurance advisor. So we want a good advisor. Advisor is a guide for us, and which policy is good, which policy will give you different policies are there. For child care is there, and the girl babies are there, and the woman is there, the life, lot of policies are there. The advisor is going to be play a vital role. So Rao, in his article, Policyholders' Perceptions on LIC Policies and Services, with the reference to the Srikakulam district in Andhra Pradesh, and just he observed that the insurance occupies an important position in the financial sector of the Indian economy. We know that the Life Insurance Corporation of India has devised several policies to satisfy the diversified needs, the different needs of the people and the customers. The main objective of the research is studied is the policyholders' perceptions on LIC policies and services. So this is the reference of the Andhra Pradesh state. The Vijay Kumar, in his PhD thesis, a contemporary study of factors influencing the urban and rural consumers for buying different life insurance policies in Haryana state, make a depth study of the factors which are influencing the buying behavior. This is very vast. We know that so on we are teaching about the buyer's behavior. It is the biggest concept in the marketing. So how we are going to understand the buying behavior, how you are going to sell, how you are going to make a consumer to adopt your policy, that is very important to convince them. That's why the buyer's behavior for buying life insurance policy in Haryana is studied on this aspect. The study outlines that the insurance agent was the most influential factor. I told you already, the agents are the most influence factor for selling of the life insurance policies. So among rural and urban policy holders, but the rural areas should be educated. Rural areas should be educated based on that LIC. So when I'm coming to the Sharma conducted a study on service quality and customer satisfaction of insurance, and with the 300 samples, he studied exposed that the service quality has a positive impact on consumer satisfaction. The service quality, always the service quality is going to be countable. Just before that, one of the madam was telling about the perception and satisfaction. Yes, accepted. Whatever the madam said is accepted. The perception and the satisfaction is very, very important. The customer is satisfied, and there is sky is our limit in for any product. It may be LIC or it may be other product. So what is the need for the study? The literature review revealed that the most of the research workers and the life insurance business, they have given some studies in India have concentrated on the buyer's behavior, selling perceptions, and the life insurance products, service quality, whatnot, consumer satisfaction, customer satisfaction in the life insurance industry, and distribution channels, so of life insurance sectors and all. But there are very few studies concentrated on the service rendered by LIC India, and its agents. The agents are going to play a vital role whenever we are going to pay, whenever you are going to pay LIC premiums. Now we are paying on the online, but when it is an offline, when you are going to any LIC office, we are seeing the big signboards of the LIC agents. They crack this one with the 2 stars, 5 stars, 3 stars, like that. So that is the agents are making a vital role. This study includes the surveys and the fact-finding studies of various kinds. The major purpose of the research is a descriptive study on the policyholder's perception and level of satisfaction. These two are very important. And service quality of LIC agents is going to be studied in this. It is also said that FIs and the problems as they exist or faced present by the respondents. So importance of this study. The importance of this study is this: the study analyzes the perceptions of customers considering the various parameters like service offered by the LIC agents, availability of the service, accessibility, behavior toward the customer, etc. So here, these are the very, very important, how the agents are behaving towards the customer. Are they available? Are they accessible? Are they giving a good service? Availability of service is very, very important. If anybody needs a service, immediately it is going to be served. You know that the satisfaction level will be boost. So which would help the company to know where they need to improve, and they also would come to know the expectations of the customers from them. So this is next slide. We are moving to the scope of the study. The study would examine the customer perceptions towards the services rendered by LIC India with its agents. So here the company can better understanding about the consumer's perception towards the insurance products offered by the LIC of India. And it also to be consideration to the various parameters like total premium, accessibility, number of policies, number of branches, security, and so on. We can see that. It is a sample study. It takes into consideration only the public sector insurance company, that is nothing but an LIC of India. And the customer survey is also based on the sample customers done from the city of Hyderabad. This is the IT hub. And I'm very happy to belong to in Hyderabad, a city. The study excludes from its purview that analysis of the financial performances of the companies in terms of profits, dividends, financial ratios, etc. We are not going to that part. That is a performance, financial performance. We are not going to that side. So objective of this study, the objectives is taken up. These are the following objectives. The first one is we are going to see to study the policyholders' perception towards services rendered by LIC of India. Second one is the study of the factors influencing the consumers in the selecting a policy from LIC of India. The third one, we are going to see the study of the policy holders' satisfaction towards the Life Insurance Corporation of India. So research methodology under adoption is that the data for the study is collected from the primary as well as secondary sources. The primary source is a small survey method is adopted, a collection of the primary data, a structural questionnaire is run, and it is going to be collected from the policy holders, and the questionnaire consisting of 20 questions, which are to be answered by the respondents, obviously. The secondary sources, the data is collected from the reports of IRDA handbook as an Indian insurance statistics, internet books, and related issues. And the company sources, what not different various secondary sources it has taken. So sample size, if you see the sample size for a primary data, it is a collection of 100 life insurance policy holders of Life Insurance Corporation of India. The sampling method is taken as a convenience sampling method is adapted. And tools we have taken the ANOVA, One-way ANOVA, percentage method, graphs and charts apply to analyze the primary data. It is also a data analyzed using Word and Excel and SPSS. And here, if you see the analysis of the data, that's table 1, the age group, that is a group of the respondents we have taken into consideration up to 25 years, up to 35, 35 to 45, above 45 years, and number of respondents are there, the percentage is there. But it is observed that from the table, 33% of the respondents are in the middle age group. And those are the young age group up to 25 years account for about 26 of the sample. And 23 of the respondents are in the age group of 35 to 45. And above 45, we have taken into consideration, that is 18. The next in gender classification, the male female perception, we have taken the 57 male number of respondents we have taken, the female is a 43% we have taken, and it is clearly mentioned in the above table that 57% of the respondents are the male and the remaining 43 respondents are the female. The female numbers have taken a small, if we compare with the male. I'm extremely sorry for I'm saying to the female teachers and women teachers. And next, I'm going for the table 3, the qualifications which are going to be taken. Illiterates we have taken, considering, and up to SSC and intermediate, graduates and postgraduates. This is taken. The majority of the respondents, 32% respondents, are having post-graduation and higher education. So 26% of respondents are having graduation, and 21% respondents are having SSC qualification, 12% respondents illiterates, and 9% having intermediate. And the next slide, source of motivation. How the sources of motivation have taken place, from where they got this motivation to purchase a policy. So sources of motivation to a life insurance policy. From the, I have taken different source of motivation. More than this also we may get, but I have taken friends, family members, colleagues, media, insurance agents, and agents and others. So here, if you see the table, with a reference to the source of the motivation of family members figured first with the 40%, 40.7% of the respondents being influenced by the family members, and followed by the insurance agents 34.3% and friends 70.6%. We are seeing the different with the colleagues influence the respondents was only 4.6. This may be because the lack of awareness about the life insurance policies, or maybe busy with their core business activities always. You have such experience. I have such an experience that whenever we meet as an employees, we always discuss about the research, or we are also discuss about the HRA. We are always we are talking about the increments, and we are talking about the promotions, but we never discussed about the LIC. This is very important here. That's why, my dear students, sorry, I am extremely sorry, my dear patrons, here the insurance policy discussions should be taken place among the colleagues. So the next table, when we are going to the summary of one-way ANOVA, from this ANOVA result, it is observed that there is no significant difference in the reveal the satisfaction of the policy holders with respect to the factors considered for the taking life insurance policy. The number of policies taken, the sign of p-values are greater than 0.05. The null hypothesis is accepted. With respect to the tax benefits, it is observed that there is a significant difference in the level of satisfaction of the policy holders with the respect of the factors considered for the taking life insurance policy and the number of policies taken. So where the sign, the p-value is less than 0.05, therefore the null hypothesis is rejected. So my dear student, my dear patrons, the researchers, the professors, so this is what I want to, I'm coming to the conclusion part. The last table, from the above table, the employment satisfaction with the insurance policies of life insurance of India. The employees are going to be taken, the government employees have taken, private employees taken, self-employed have taken, retired, student, others, the different cultured employment has taken here. From the above table, it is clearly observed that the majority, that is 66% of respondents, are satisfied with the insurance policies of Life Insurance Corporation of India. This is great things to hear. This is out of satisfied respondents. 37 respondents are private employees And 21 respondents are highly satisfied, and 12% of the respondents are neutrally satisfied. That only 1% respondent to the private employees are dissatisfied with the insurance policy of Life Insurance Corporation of India. The conclusion part, and it is concluded that from a small study that companies need to develop the product keeping in a view the requirement of the prospective life insurance policyholders. They have to treat provision insurance as a service by assuring a financial security to the life of an individual rather than a profit-making business. This is very, very important. They should see that the financial security will be given by charging affordable premium, maintaining the transparency in the policy-related matters, wherever offering by them, and efficient services will be provided, and the sale of the policy with the prompt actions will be taken. And the queries, this is very important. Whenever we are going into the LIC offices, any regarding queries of the premium, any queries of the regarding the different issues, we are having a lot of problems. So that's why the company should consider that the customer is going to be satisfied. The customer is very important person who is going to be coming into our premises. So it will, the policyholders will help any life insurance company to sustain and grow in the highly competitive environment. Now we are seeing a lot of competition is on, So a lot of private sector life insurance companies entered into the business. So we should be very careful. We have to save our public sector. So thank you one and all. Thank you very much.
Yes, it is visible.
All right. Good evening, honorable panelists and respected audience. Today, I'm here to present the title of the paper is Impacts of Demonetization with a special focus on MSMEs. This paper has been co-authored by me, that's Jaskar Bindra, and Assistant Economics Professor Dr. Eritrea Roy. Starting with the introduction of the paper, what demonetization is. Demonetization is simply the conversion of old currency into new currency. Now, the simplest question which emerges in the mind of everyone present here is that why are we demonetizing the currency? What is the need of demonetization? Because demonetization is not at all an easy process. Rather, it is a highly tedious process. So why demonetization is happening? The simplest answer to this question is that demonetization is happening in order to reduce the level of black money, in order to reduce the level of crime, reduction of tax evasion, as well as reduction of corruption. That's the major aim of demonetization. The next question which comes to mind is the demonetization which happened in the year 2016 by the Indian government. Was that the first demonetization process in our country? The answer is no. Because in the past, if we took the history of a country, demonetization have happened twice before the demonetization of 2016. It happened in the year 1946 as well as 1978. Now, the objective of the study of this paper is that what are the impacts of demonetization, whether there are positive impacts or there are negative impacts. And if there are both positive and negative impacts, what is the ratio? That is, which side is greater, whether the positive one or the negative one. We have done number of reviews of literature in the paper, but here I will be reviewing just one economist. That is Vijay Dimple. According to her, demonetization had both positive and negative impacts. But when we analyze demonetization carefully, then according to the study, the demonetization did not achieve its objective. The reason was to bring out black money, to bring out the currency which was all in black. But in reality, what happened was that 99% of the currency got converted. That is, there was conversion of 500 and 1,000 currency denominations. And if we analyze statistically, then there was a total of 15.44 crores which was deposited in the bank, out of which 5.28 was already deposited. This clearly means that 99% of the currency got converted from black to white. This is a review by one of the famous economists. Rest of the reviews have been mentioned in the paper. Now, moving to the research methodology. This research is based on secondary data, which was available online, which was available in various journals, which was available in various books and magazines, on the basis of which I and my co-author have presented this. Now moving to the basics or the beginning of the paper, that is the meaning of demonetization. As I have already explained what demonetization is, again, it is the conversion of old currency to new for the purpose of reducing black money, tax evasion, as well as corruption in the economy. Now, with the demonetization, which notes were actually demonetized? Government demonetized the two major currency during the time of 2016. That is on 8th November 2016, government demonetized 500 and 1,000 currency denominations. Now with demonetization, we have to analyze the impacts. First of all, what is the role of counterfeit currency? What role demonetization plays on counterfeit currency? Demonetization has a direct impact on counterfeit currency. This counterfeit currency is highly being used by the terrorists for the purpose of funding, for the purpose of enhancing their bases, let it be on the POK or the Ladakh border or on the border of Northeast Frontier Province. So this counterfeit currency could directly be controlled when we demonetize the currency, because when the notes will be exchanged with the old to the new ones, this counterfeit currency could not be changed. And that is a major curve which can be brought to the counterfeit currency by the process of demonetization. Now, the further impacts includes demands of durable assets as well as the demand of non-durable assets, and how the difference between rich and poor sector came. With the demonetization, both demand of durable assets as well as the demand of non-durable assets reduced drastically. The simplest reason was very clear. The people were hardly able to manage their basic needs and necessities, that is fooding, shelter, and clothing. How will they be able to afford the durable as well as non-durable good? Let it be the poor section or let it be the rich section. But the negative impact which demonetization brought was there was rise in the gap between rich and poor sections of the society. The rich, who were actually holding the black currency, who were having tons and tons and crores of black currency, got that converted under the table. And the poor stood in the long queues for hours and hours under the sun for getting the bare minimum amount. They don't have any black currency, but they were the one who actually suffered. And this demonetization actually brought a rise in the gap between the rich and poor section of society. The next is limits over cash withdrawal. This was the direct impact on the day itself, that is 8th November 2016. Limits over cash withdrawal were placed. A person can withdraw rupees 2,000 from the bank. Person are standing in long queues just to withdraw rupees 2,000. But the question is, were the people able to withdraw even rupees 2,000? The simplest answer is no. Thousands of people were standing in long queues, but when they were able to reach till the ATM, what they used to realize, ATM has no money in itself, because the denomination which were present in ATM was just 100 rupees, 50 rupees, 10 rupees. Imagine how many notes would be required when we have to convert this 10, 50 or 100 rupees into 2,000. That too, a family who has 10 people and only a single person is having an ATM card, that person can only withdraw rupees 2,000. How is that person gonna manage the survival of this family? The process of demonetization was totally an unprepared disaster for the economy, and the impacts are clearly depicting the same, the struggle which the poor went through and the rich people who under the table actually got converted the black money, and that's why 99% of the black currency got converted into white despite such a tedious process, demonetization. The next is government did not achieve its objective. As I am explaining the impacts, it's clearly visible that major objective of government was to catch out black currency, which was not achieved. The government aimed that tax evasion should be reduced. But in reality, what happened in the financial year 2016 and 17 was that there was a drastic fall in the level of taxes. So again, by one or the other way, even though this demonetization might have some positive impacts, but when we see at a major picture, the demonetization was a big blunder. Government was not able to achieve the objective which it targeted. The reason was not that demonetization policy is bad. Rather, the reason was the unpreparedness with which the government implemented the policy. The next is fall in tax. As I said earlier, there was a drastic fall in the level of taxation. Similar are the statistics which are showing the same. As many as 8.8 million taxpayers did not file their tax returns in the financial year 2016 and 17. This means that there was a huge fall in the level of tax. Now imagine the government who is aiming that we should get more tax is actually meeting with less taxation, is able to get or fetch less tax amount. This clearly shows itself the impacts of demonetization on the economy, on an individual, on the producer, on the consumer, every individual in the economy. This graph clearly depicts how MSMEs were being targeted by the demonetization. Demonetization actually struck down the growth of the MSMEs, which are actually holding back the rural economy, which are the ones who are actually pushing forward the rural economy to grow. So with this, the major findings of the paper were that there was a negative fall in the level of MSME production capacity. Why there was a fall in the production capacity? Because there was a cash crunch. Since there was less cash available, production could not go on with the same pace as it was going. Because of the fall in the production capacities, the units which were engaged in the process of production could not continue with the production process. As a result, there was a rise in the level of unemployment. Unemployment increased, the poor wage, the daily wage earners, unorganized labor force lost their jobs. And this brought again a setback to us. This setback was not just limited to the year of 2016 and 17 when this demonetization actually came. Rather, the vibes of demonetization are still being felt when we are in 2021. 5 years have passed, but the impacts are still visible. We are still trying to overcome the impacts which were brought by the government in the year 2016 and 17. So I conclude by saying that demonetization surely slowed down the economic activities. It had a very strong negative impact on different sectors of the economy. This was not because demonetization is a bad policy. Rather, there was unpreparedness on the part of government. Implementation was not up to the mark. And thus, in the current time, what I and others and every economist believe is that there should be enhancement of education policy and awareness so that government should put more focus on the MSME sector because it's the rural back. Government should now enhance the funding to these MSME sectors which faced a long struck back because of this demonetization process. And that's how recovery is possible. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you so much. So, if anyone has any queries, then they may ask. We hope that there are no queries and we move on to the next presenter.
Thank you.
And I'm going to present a lecture on occupational stress among women administrative support staff in hospitals. As it is part of my second PhD research and under the guidance of Dr. T. Rita Rebecca and co-author Dr. S. Anthony Rowell Golden from St. Xavier's College, Palankote. And regarding talking about occupational stress, I hope every sector is having more number of people who are working and they are facing stress. And when particularly talking about occupational stress, when they are not passionate about their work or if they are having some work pressure in the workplace, automatically it leads to occupational stress due to certain kind of forceness we are working. Without passion, if you are working, automatically it will lead to stress. So the major cause for this study is, especially I'm talking about only women because they need to balance both family as well as work. So in this modern era, women are working with various sectors to fulfill their dreams. As you people are aware of that in ancient days, they are not talking about giving education, going for work, still it is existing. So only certain percentage of the women are going for work with passion and many are working to manage their family financially. So this leads to a kind of stress, and when they are talking about if the stress caused due to occupation, that is called occupational stress. It may be a negative impact that happens in the workplace, and if it is a mismatch between the demands and ability of the workforce. When we talk about healthcare sector, I hope everybody can accept this. Recently, during this COVID time, many are suffering when we are taking rest at home, but in healthcare sector, they are working day and night. How they are taking this, their occupation as their passion. And here the results found that they are talking near the cost is 74% of the employees working in healthcare sector of facing stress. That means our 3/4 of the employees working in healthcare sector are facing stress. Okay, regarding the growth in the workplace, so they are having the major cause of what is it, the growth in the workplace. Most of the things are the recent studies are evaluating, and they are telling out of 10 employees in an organization, 9 are having work stress in the workplace. That will affect their mental health too. So when they are trying for employees burnout, out of 5, 4 is having burnout of this stress at the workplace. And recent finding says this study was a report was given by Mental Health American Association in the Mind the Workplace 2020-21. Out of in 2018, 46% of the people are facing work environment stress, and it was increased to 65% in the current year. That means in 2021. Even though there are work from home, or even though there are so many reasons began during this COVID, it increased from 45% to 65%. 20% the stress level is got into. And it may be due to the financial insecurity. Over 60% of the employees are facing work environment stress due to financial insecurity. And these are all some top 10 workplace stresses, which usually it's common for all the sectors. The first one is low salary. Second one is long hours, excessive workload, few opportunities for advancement, uninterested work, and it's related with lack of social support, not having control over job relevance and organization culture, bad management practices, relationship at work, and physical work environment. So when we particularly talking about healthcare sector, women may experience stress as a result of varieties of work situations. These job conditions include concern low pay, lack of job satisfaction, mental stress, work-life balance, career progression, competition, stress at work, role ambiguity, conflict with co-workers and supervisors, repetitive and monotonous work, etc. So the purpose of this study is focusing on identifying the level of occupational stress among women administrative support staff working in select hospitals in Tirunelveli district of Tamil Nadu. The objective of the study is to examine the causes of occupational stress among women administrative support staff in hospital sector, to identify the level of occupational stress among women administrative support staff working in select hospitals. Due to ethical concern, I'm not revealing the names of the hospital, how the research was carried out. And the methodology, the survey method was adapted. Structured questionnaire was used to collect the primary data using for telephone interview. As it is a COVID situation, it is very difficult to meet nurses as well as the menial job workers who are working in the hospital sector. So the researcher adapted telephone interview for selecting the respondents. So 60 women administrative support staff, that is 30 nurses and 30 menial job workers, were contacted over the phone. Out of that, 46 were responded in the study, 26 nurses and 20 menial job workers. Others are not ready to spare time for interview. So only 46 sample respondents were selected for the study. The data were processed using SPSS, using analysis, t-test, and ANOVA were used. Hypothesis of the study: there is no significant difference between nurses and the menial job workers with respect to occupational stress. There is no significant difference between government and private healthcare sector with respect to nurses and menial job workers on occupational stress. Third one is there is no significant difference among years of experience with respect to occupational stress among nurses and menial job workers. Regarding discussion, the first one is majority of 69% of the menial job workers as respondents are in the age group between 41 to 50. When compared to nurses as respondents, it's between the age group of 31 to 40 years. 45% of menial job workers are working more than 10 years in the same hospital, whereas 56% respondents of the nurses are working more than 10 years in the same hospital. Most of the menial job workers are experiencing stress in the work environment, whereas 69% of the nurses selected as respondents are experiencing stress. So when compared to nurses, the menial job workers are facing more stress because it reveals 78.44%. The menial job workers are getting stressed because of lack of recognition, low salary, and poor treatment of the hospital management, which affects their mental health. Whereas Nurses are getting stressed from lack of recognition, no proper rest, conflict among co-workers. So majority are working as menial job workers due to financial instability in the family, whereas nurses in the hospital sector are passionate in selecting the profession with the motto of serving the needy. So when we talk about menial job workers here, that means the lay people working in the hospital who are taken into care, because many of the time they are not taken into account when they are going for research. Because when I start writing about occupational stress in a hospital sector, what I found is there are ample number of research conducted on stress among nurses as well as doctors. But very few studies, they are focusing on menial job workers, but they are the real factor in the hospital sector, how to clean the hospital and how all these things are taken care by this menial job workers. But there is a lack in that. So the researchers selected menial job workers as a part of the giving more importance as administrative support staff in a healthcare sector. So that for the result of hypothesis testing, it is found that there is no significant difference between government and private sector or menial job workers and nurses in healthcare. That means they're having similar type of stress. That means whether it is private sector or public sector, that does nothing, but the stress level is similar. And menial job workers reported significantly higher stress from professionals, which was significantly high level from on stress towards work environment, whereas nurses reported significantly higher stress from uncooperative patients, which are significantly high level on stress towards work environment in all dimension of occupational stress. So in the opinion of the menial job workers, whatever work they have done, they are not getting proper recognition from the professionals, and they used to scold them in front of others. Even their work is slightly different. That is the personal opinion observed from the point of menial job workers, because every time they are cleaning periods, there is no time to clean the entire working hours they are supposed to clean. But even though they are cleaning the hospital surroundings in a proper manner, they are not properly recognized by the professionals as well as the hospital management. And most of the menial job workers working in the hospital sector, they are come under contract basis when we talk about private sector. As well as in government sector, certain people are recruited from contract basis, and the contractor won't treat them properly when in front of the patients as well as others in the hospital, that means working environment. So regarding discussion, the results of the study reveals that the menial job workers are more stressful in the occupation due to disrespect among peer authorities and patients. Due to the problem of unemployment and lack of skills for other qualified jobs, they are forced to choose job to run their family financially. The nurses are passionate towards the job, but they are more stressful due to more working time, less break time, conflict with the peer group members, and managing the attendance in and out patients. So the recommendation for stress relieving, that means it is a major part how to blast out our stress. Otherwise, it will lead to many health issues. Even though the respondents are working in healthcare sector, it is very important to take care of their mental health. So regarding this, the three important structured recommendations or organizations can work on these areas to de-stress. That is, the first one is streamlining schedule management process. That means here, when we talk about day shift and night shift, many are not interested to go with shift basis, and they are telling that not even their suggestions are taken into care. Many few are interested to go for night shift, and few are not interested to go for a night shift, but they are forced to go to with that schedule. And also, when we talk about menial job workers, there is no proper timing. They are supposed to clean all the time. And what is their mindset is, if they are give some proper timing to clean this area, that will be a good way of understanding their mindset, how they need to manage the situation. That means the management should schedule the process. What are the ways the work can be scheduled to the employees, and they can take much steps to de-stress the employees' stress, because because of the productivity of the employees only, the hospitals are getting goodwill. So they need to give some proper guidance to the employees how to de-stress themselves. They can conduct yoga classes, or they can have an interaction with the employees, make them feel at home instead of making them so stressful at their workplace. What are the needs of the employees can be identified, and that can be taken care with some special initiatives. And the second one is regular communication. When we talk about this, there will be a lack of communication, because most of the hospitals, when we take, they are not allowed to use their own personal mobiles, because it will spoil their working time when they are communicating with the patients, as well as some emergency situations. So they are not having, they are not using their personal way of getting communication. But when we talk about the floor management of for communicating, if there may be delay in getting the communication or the information, so that may lead to some problem, and the hospital management may think of how to rectify this communication gap between top management as well as lower management, and how they can make the communication process more effective. And third one is talking about wellness program, because it is very important. Many of the companies are adapted, especially when we talk about IT sector, or when you're going with some Western countries, they are having good wellness program schemes for the employees. But in other places, there is no such programs. Even recent days, they have adapted with some health related exercise, yoga, laughing therapy, and all these things are given in certain hospitals. But even though these things are going on, the employees are feeling that we are hesitate to do that wellness program. That means we need to cultivate the culture that they are supposed to plan out their stress to make them mentally fit as well as healthy, and that will affect their physical health. So that should be some wellness program need to be planned by the hospital management, and also by the employees' point of view. They also need to work on certain areas. Take an example, they may have a family trip outside, or they will spend some time along with their pet animals. During this COVID time, it is very difficult to go outside. At least have spend some good time with their family when they are at rest. Or they will have some relaxation with their nature. They can sit in upstairs watching moon or stars, or they can morning breeze a walk around their neighborhood, or they can chit chat with their friends at least during their free time. So that can be taken into account. And when we talk about women, it should be more conscious, because they are supposed to take care of their family too. So the family also need to support their working professionals, women in the family. So that need to be cultivated, and that need to be educated to the people, those who are at workplace as well as in family, to avoid stress. So regarding to conclude this, the occupational stress and environment have become major concern on a global and national level. The mental health of employees were affected because of given societal value of work. When we talk about menial job workers, they are telling that I am as a menial job worker working in a hospital sector itself, they are feeling ashamed about revealing about their occupation. So the amount of time spent at workplace and the current changes in the nature of work to be carried out, and the pleasant mindset need to be inculcated with the employees to make the work very pleasant. It is not surprising that work stress appears to be on the rise. Healthcare workers frequently experiencing work-related or occupational stress as a result of high expectations from the service providers, combined with insufficient time, skills, and social support at workplace. It is very important that the professional and authorities in the hospital need to recognize service menial job workers in the healthcare sector, because job category and specialization influence more on occupational stress due to unpleasant work environment. So flexible strategies to need to be implemented to improve employees' productivity, continuation, and personal and well-being. Thank you. Is there any questions?
Yes, ma'am, I would request you to show me your objective slide. Yes, ma'am. The objective is to study the occupational stress among women administrative support staff. So, who are considered as an administrative support staff in a hospital, ma'am?
It's when we talk about women administrative support for staff in the hospital, from the management, next to the management who are all working, they are all treated as administrative support staff, including doctors in private sector, they are treated as administrative support staff. doctors,
Yes.
nurses, and we have a paramedical staff, receptionist, and we have scan centers in the hospital. Few hospitals they are having scan centers. So the technicians and they are going with menial job workers too. They are all treated as administrative support staff.
So, ma'am, you have studied the occupational stress on the menial job workers and nurses.
Yes.
So, menial job worker is basically unskilled.
Yes, so they are
It's
unskilled,
unskilled,
right?
yes. And whereas
Yes.
the nurses, they require certain level of skills to pursue their job.
Yes.
So, is the questionnaire to assess the occupational stress same for both the menial job workers and nurses?
No, different personal setup was framed. That
There
is
is a different set of questionnaire.
yes, that's because for menial job workers, for interview schedule, I have framed because for them the educational level is they are not even graduates. They are the only up to 10th standard, 5th standard, like that only they are educated.
What parameters you have analyzed for menial job workers and what factors you have assessed for nurses?
For nurses, I have
Basis
adapted
of which you have done the analysis.
index. I have adapted occupational stress index for analyzing the occupational stress of nurses. For menial job workers, I have framed my own scale. It consists of how they are going with, that means these factors were taken into consideration. Right.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, regarding this low pay, lack of job satisfaction, mental stress, work life, that means the major top 10 stresses of workplace was considered. Because when we talk about this menial job workers, I need to accept your point because the similar question cannot be asked for nurses as well as menial job workers. Separate scale was
Yes.
prepared. And because it is overgrown, I got so many informal information also apart from the questionnaire. That is also I found from this over phone interview because even though it is a structured questionnaire, menial job workers or yes.
Please go ahead with next participant.
Of Education, Davangere, Karnataka, India. My research article is correlation study on institutional information and functioning about quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. Teacher education occupies a central position in the whole education system. In recent year, with the rapid expansion of teacher education institutions, the quality of teacher education has been challenged. For the solution of this challenge, total quality management has been needed. The motive force underlying the philosophy of total quality management is to lay stress in twin principles: continuous improvement and involvement of all member in the management of an institution. It implies a marked shift in emphasis in quality management from product to people and from quantitative to qualitative terms of reference. The present research falls under the purview of quantitative research, and hence quantitative methods such as data collection, analysis, comparison, tabulation, and illustration are used among 48 randomly selected colleges of education. I received replies from 19 colleges of education only, and the same data are taken for granted for analysis. Objectives of my study is to assess the difference between 4 divisions, Bangalore, Belgavi, Gulbarga, and Mysore, with respect to institutional information about total quality management and functioning about quality management scores of colleges of education in Karnataka. Hypothesis of the study, null hypothesis. There is no correlation between institutional information and functioning scores about quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. Methodology of the study: for the present study, survey and correlation method was used as a research method for collection of information. Samples. In the present study, the sample was selected from all the 49 assessed and accredited colleges of teacher education institutions in Karnataka state. For this purpose, the 19 colleges of education were selected randomly from 4 divisions of Karnataka. All the selected colleges were recognized by the NAC and the NCT, National Council for Teacher Education. Tools used to collect the data. Total quality management scale was developed by the investigator, or various dimensions of quality education of colleges of education. Validity and reliability were established for the scale. The rating scale was developed to measure the quality management in colleges of education. The rating scale was framed on the basis of objectives of the study. Statistical techniques. The appropriate statistical tools have been used, such as simple mean, standard deviation, median, interquartile range, non-parametric Kruskal values, analysis of variance, and the Karl Pearson's correlation coefficient and other relevant statistical techniques. Analysis and interpretation. Hypothesis: there is no correlation between institutional information and functioning scores about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. To test the above null hypothesis, the Karl Pearson's product movement correlation coefficient technique has been performed, and the results are presented in the table given below. Correlation between total institutional information, table 1. Correlation between total institutional information and total functioning scores about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. From the results of the above table, it can be seen that a significant and positive relationship was observed between total institutional information and total functioning scores about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka at 5% level of significance. Therefore, the null hypothesis is rejected and alternative hypothesis is accepted. It means that there is an increase or decrease in the total institutional information scores with increase or decrease in total functioning about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. The relationship between total institutional information and total functioning scores about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka is also presented in the following scatters diagram. In this diagram, a scatter diagram of correlation between total institutional information and the total functioning scores about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. Findings and conclusion of the study. A significant and positive relationship was observed between institutional information and functioning scores about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. Conclusion: there is an increase or decrease in total institutional information scores with increase or decrease in total functioning about total quality management of colleges of education in Karnataka. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, are there any queries to be asked? No. Okay. So we can move towards the next participant.
Thank you.
Dr. Mahendra Kumar.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Here from the Department of Mass Communication and Journalism, Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar Central University, Lucknow. The reviewer chairperson, distinguished panel members, and fellow participants. Today, the topic that I'm going to present is on lifestyle communication, health and sustainable development. It is a part of a postdoctoral research work which is in process, is ongoing research work. A lot of many things that is yet to be done. Before the commencement of the paper, I would like to quote the famous author, the famous Nobel laureate, Professor Gunnar Myrdal, his quotation on poverty and environment, on poverty, where he said in his book Asian Drama, poverty anywhere is a threat to prosperity everywhere. Poverty anywhere is a threat to prosperity everywhere. In the similar tune, environmental degradation anywhere is a threat to the entire civilization everywhere. Entire civilization everywhere. So from these two, we can take two important problems. One is environment. Second one is poverty. Friend, ever since the end of the Second World War, there was a common concern among the development theorists to have a common consensus and to have a panacea which can address the war-ravaged economy at any minute. Discussion was held and a common resolution was passed for the speedy economic development of the war-ravaged economy. To address the war-ravaged economy, they concluded saying and prescribed an element that is of industrial revolution. Industrial revolution. So development was there. Development was taking place. Industry was rampantly, industry was placed set off in every nook and corner of the world. But after some few years, after a decade, when the same committee, when the same development theorists and policymakers across the world, they sat together to evaluate the fruits of development out of the industrial revolution, they found out that yes, development was there, but was misdirectional. It was lopsided. The direction of development was lopsided. When the thought of what exactly went wrong, despite the best intention of the development theorists and policymakers of introducing industrial revolution, they concluded in saying that there were some missing link in the development chain, and possibly that missing link could be the communication. So a new concept came into existence in the form of development communication, or communication for development. So communication was considered as a missing link in the development chain, and focus was given on communication. Friends, communication is a process through which an individual enters into mental cooperation with another individual, so long as they comes to constitute a common conscience. So here they embedded communication in the development chain, and they started focusing on development communication in order to disseminate the fruits of development accrued from industrial revolution, especially to trickle down from the development rich to the development poor. So accordingly, development took place, but thereafter, in 1978, there was a meet at Rome, which was popularly known as Club of Rome meeting, where the concern of the policymakers and the ministers, the environment ministers across the world, was on environmental degradation. So from that Club of Rome proposal, they concluded saying that what exactly should be the limits to growth? What exactly should be the limits to growth? And growth should not be at the cost of environment. So a striking balance and a state of equilibrium should be derived, should be drawn in between development and environment, so that environment should not be destroyed at the name of development, and development should not be compensated at the name of environmental protection. So for a balanced development, for a balanced growth and development, both environment and development, they should go hands hands in hand. And a new concept came in the form of environmental, a concept came in the form of environmental protection and communication for environment or environmental communication. So development communication, thereafter environmental communication and environment, and gradually the concept shaped and reshaped, and the new concept that we witnessed after the 1989 Broughton Commission meet in the form of sustainable development. So a new concept emerged in the form of sustainable development. So sustainable development, when we are talking about sustainable development is a development that meets the need of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. Friends, resources are limited, so demands efficient utilization. Resources are limited, so demands efficient utilization. So in order to efficiently utilize the scarce resources, it demands scientific utilization, and it is sustainable development which teaches us from a platform of how successfully and how efficiently we can utilize the scarce resources in a way that we can, after satisfying our own requirements, we could be able to preserve some of the resources for our coming generation for their use. This is what sustainable development, in a broad sense, in a broad meaning, it teaches us. So when we are talking about sustainable development, often it is compared with a coin having two sides with two obligations. Sustainable development often is compared with a coin having two sides with two coins. One side, one obligation, two sides with two coin, two sides of a single coin with two obligations. One, poverty alleviation. Second one is environmental protection. So these are the two important problems that we can address successfully from a common platform, that is your sustainable development. Now the question here is how effectively we use communication for sustainable development. Friends, when we are talking about lifestyle
Dr.
communication.
Mahinder Kumar,
Yes.
I'm interrupting you in between. Please
Yes.
be brief and straightway come to the objective, please.
Yes. So when we are talking about lifestyle communication, now since keeping in mind the paucity of time, I'm just making it a little more precise, giving a case study in support of my discussion. Friends, this case study is from Uttar Pradesh. This case study is from Uttar Pradesh, where in a certain district of Uttar Pradesh, there is a small village. In that particular small village, there's a doctor, a trained doctor in charge of the health center. I tell you, the village that I'm talking about is completely cut off from the mainstream. It is completely cut off from the mainstream. And in that particular village, there's a small health center, and the health center is assigned the responsibility of in charge of a doctor, MBBS doctor of the UP government is in charge of the health center. One day what happened? A lady from the same village, she rushed to the clinic with her ailing baby for some immediate medical prescription. When the lady with her ailing baby rushed to the clinic for some immediate prescription to the doctor after a thorough diagnosis gave some medicines and prescribed, saying you have to administer this medicine. Half a teaspoonful of medicine in every 6 hours of duration. You have to administer half a teaspoonful of medicine in every 6 hours of duration. This was a prescription given by the doctor. The lady, according to her own understanding, returned back and applied and administered the medicine according to her own set of understanding. But unfortunately, in the next day, the baby was brought to the clinic with a condition almost near collapse. After seeing the condition again, the doctor, after giving a high dose of medicine, the situation was controlled. The baby was the collapsed baby was rescued. But here the point is, what exactly went wrong? The doctor was a trained doctor. The prescription was good. The medicine was good, but what exactly went wrong because of which the baby was brought to the clinic near a condition near collapse? Here plays a concept where here a concept comes into the picture, that is healthy communication. The doctor, being a doctor, he also is acting as a communicator. And a communicator, when he's acting, when a communicator is describing something or communicating with a target audience, what exactly should be the structure of a communication, and if at all there will be a problem or distortion, what sort of problems that is going to happen. This is the what I'm now explaining within 2 minutes. The doctor, within 2 minutes, I'll take 2 minutes, sir.
Dzień dobry. Dzień dobry, Panie Karol, bo się zastanawiam, kiedy się z Panem umówić na podpisanie tej pracy. Bo w poniedziałek Pan...
Hello? Hello?
Yes, please continue and conclude.
Yes. Then the doctor, he is a communicator. So when he said you have to administer half a teaspoonful of medicine in every 6 hours of duration, he should have kept in his mind the socio-economic background of the lady, from which background, because the lady hails from a village which is completely cut off from the mainstream, and the way the lady was prescribed the medicine.
Afternoon to everyone. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in such a wonderful conference. My paper title is A Comparative Study on branding strategies of real estate companies and its impact on consumer decision-making process. Because we all know that real estate market is now a booming market. If I focus on the introduction part of this, real estate is a very influential market in the India's GDP. The whole India's GDP, 6% is contributed by real estate market. But now that still two years we are shut down due to lockdown and the pandemic. But what is the precaution that real estate markets or real estate managers can do after the pandemic situation? So this is the primary introduction of my paper. I would like to introduce the objective of my study is that to access and evaluate the real estate market condition which prevail in India. As I said before, that it is a booming industry and it is growing day by day. But due to the pandemic situation, the market is like any other market is totally shut down. So my first objective and the primary objective is that what will the companies will do after the end of the pandemic or during the pandemic? We know that the companies has initiated many techniques to gain their business. So we would like to discuss about their business. And the second is to know and examine the specific real estate market condition which do prevail in Kolkata. Basically, the study is basic on the Kolkata's real estate market and the pandemic situation, their scenario, their strategies for during the issues and after the issues. In the literature review, I have gone through many of the papers and I understand that the real estate market is not as influential market in India, but as well as the South Asian market also. I would like to share a point that in the Hong Kong market, during the pandemic time, the country has achieved the highest number of real estate booking, and it is a great thing. If I talk to the literature review, I just want to give a glimpse of Amit Kumar Sinha 2020 paper had done a conceptual study on the issues and challenges of this industry. That that definitely there is a COVID situation and people are facing the challenges. But if there is not a COVID situation, then what will people do and what will their actions of their reaction? We can find it by this paper. And we say this that it is a boom of liberalization and the markets of Delhi, Mumbai and Calcutta has been on update. I have gone through many of the papers, but I have not found a specific paper which gives me a glimpse about after the pandemic situation of the real estate market. So it is so maybe it's a different perspective to each of the author that what should the strategies the real estate market would do after the pandemic end or during the pandemic end to gain or increase their business. The research method I used is in this industry is mixed research method, which we use to be effective combination of exploratory conclusive. Beside that, it is a real research method, and it is the primary source of the research is by doing surveys. I take 150 respond, which of the 75 from the managers of a different real estate companies and 75 of the public who are going to buy their real estate flats. I take their opinion, and by their opinion, we would like to know that what is in the market and what the customers have won from the marketeers. The expected outcome of the study is the study would provide new method and systems of approach of real estate market, basically in Kolkata, and it also helps to would provide new brand equity and brand value strategies for Kolkata real estate marketing to improve consumers' behavior. We all know that real estate markets are doing different kind of strategies to attract the customer, like giving the discounts or their virtual tour. This is the strategies they are going to take. So this is the expected outcome of my studies. The data interpretations of analysis is that now even today also, most of the younger person wants to invest in the real estate market because they think that market is growing day by day, and even they are too comfortable to purchase it on the virtual tool. We can say that in our past, if we want to buy some flats or like this, we may go to the place and inquiry about the locality or like this. But nowadays, due to the pandemic and for the updated of the technologies, people are so much comfortable to buy it by the virtual tour, or like living in another city to buy it in another city due to the updated version of technologies. The result and discussions of the paper I received that an online promotion increased the brand value or brand awareness of real estate companies. Benefit of the establishment is online promotion, because nowadays everything is online, like food to tuitions to everything is online. So real estate market is just updating and try to fit in that precisely, because without the online version, it maybe cannot be possible. But the outcomes of the studies is that main of the updated or the digitalization is basically on the big tier city or the urbanization. If the person wants to get a flat in the rural area or the semi-rural area, then maybe he or she finds some difficulty because for the outdated of the technologies. So this is from my side. Thank you everyone for listening.
Well done, Asma.
Just a moment, ma'am. It's yeah. Good evening to everyone. The topic that which we have chosen for today's presentation is cryptocurrency, a bubble or here to stay. The paper or our presentation is in 5 parts: about cryptocurrency, the research design, about various cryptocurrencies that are included in our study, major findings relating to them, and finally, conclusion. Before starting the presentation, if we look at this diagram, we can see that currency as a medium of exchange has a very long journey from centuries ago till recently. However, from barter to gold to onwards, there has been a difficult, unprepared, and anxious and half-hearted movement from one type of currency to another. Today, we are at a state where we are moving from plastic currency or plastic money to cryptocurrency, and the same anxiousness is there amongst the users and the government authorities. With this background, I would like to mention the research design and the plan of our analysis. And one thing I forgot to tell is this is a paper co-authored by Chaya Bagrecha, that is myself, and Jainam Bagrecha, that is my son, who's doing his BCom second year, along with CA. Coming to research, design, and plan of analysis, the main objective is to get an insight into the top 5 cryptocurrencies and compare their performances in the last 1 year. The period of study is 9th June 2020 to 8th of June 2021. These are the descriptive tools which we have used, and these are the 5 cryptocurrencies which are included: Bitcoin, Binance, Ethereum, Doge, and Cardano. And these are included based on their market capitalization, and these are the top 5 currencies in the market. The next portion will be continued by Jainam Bagrecha.
Good evening, all the panelists present. Cryptocurrencies. What is cryptocurrency? Cryptocurrency is a form of digital asset, and it's based on network distributed across multiple computers. The technology that it uses is blockchain technology. Blockchain is a database that stores encrypted blocks of data, chains them together, and then provides the information as a whole to us. This all started back in 2008 after the financial crisis, and Satoshi Nakamoto was the one who initiated this. What makes cryptocurrency different from other money? Firstly, it enables transfer at a very low cost, and it happens at a very higher pace. And the second best thing is you can transfer digital assets from anywhere to anywhere in the world. And it's secure and transparent as there are no middlemen involved. There's no intervention of banks or the government. Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency ever. It was the brainchild of Satoshi Nakamoto. As of today, as of now, no one knows if Satoshi Nakamoto was a person or a group or an institution. But based on the complexity of the technology involved in making cryptocurrencies, the blockchain technology, we may say that it is not a one-man job, and it must have taken a group of people to do this. Talking about the value of Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin rose from 5 lakh up to 50 lakh in the last 4 years. And just in the last 2 to 3 months, it has fallen down again to 27 lakh. This shows us that it has a high potential to make profits, but at the same time, it's very volatile. Putting it in a simpler way, if you had purchased Bitcoin worth $100 in 2010, as of 2021, when it touched the peak, it would have been worth $4.8 crore. That's a huge interest. That's a huge return. Dogecoin. Dogecoin was a cryptocurrency that was created as a joke to mock all the other cryptocurrencies. But the most ironic thing about this is we have seen a tremendous rise in the value of Dogecoin in the last few months. And most of the credit of this happening goes to Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla. He's been tweeting, and one tweet he makes changes the market. We've seen a 710 times rise in the value of Dogecoin in the last 7 years. Binance. Binance was launched in 2017 by Changpeng Zhao. And as of today, currently, this is the world's biggest crypto exchange. As of now, no, not as of now, but there cannot be more than 200 million Binance coins in circulation ever. Ethereum. Ethereum is the second largest cryptocurrency based on market capital. It was founded by Vitalik Buterin, and Vitalik Buterin made a donation of $1 billion worth of cryptocurrency to India's COVID relief fund just before a few months. Cardano. Cardano was founded by Charles Hoskinson in 2015. It uses a layered system. What I am trying to say here is it uses the financial system of Bitcoin and the contracts system of Ethereum. I would like to hand over it to my mother. Thank you.
speaking about the major findings of our research. First is descriptive data, and the data relating to 5 coins is summarized here. The date of creation, market capitalization, number of units in circulation, all-time high prices, the volume, and annual returns. As we look at the table, we understand that Bitcoin is the market leader with a market capitalization of $615 billion, and Doge is the youngest, is the smallest of all. Speaking about the number of units in circulation, the fun part is Doge has the highest number of units which are in circulation. And even when we look at the volume, that is the number of times these are transacted, resulting to high volume, it's a huge number as compared to other cryptocurrencies. Also, Dogecoin in the last 1 year has given a return of 875%, which is no small amount by any standards. Though Bitcoin looks very small in front of other coins in terms of returns, that also is 149% in the last 1 year, that is during our study period. This summarizes the cumulative daily returns of the selected cryptocurrencies in the last 1 year, which, as I mentioned in the previous table, indicates that Dogecoin has a return of more than 800%. Bitcoin is the least of all, and the others are in between these, around 300 and 400% returns in 1 year. Continuing with descriptive statistics, this table 2 indicates the mean, median, maximum, minimum, standard deviation, and coefficient of variations of the selected cryptocurrencies. The first 3-4 columns are normal and self-explanatory. But when we look at the last 2 columns, that is standard deviation and coefficient of variation, we understand that the standard deviation is very high compared with mean, which means that there is too much of volatility in the price movements, and the coefficient of variation of 100 plus indicates that prices have moved beyond the ranges of the cost or the price of cryptocurrencies, and this volatility is the point which is attracting people towards cryptocurrencies. आज पैसा डालेंगे तो कल एक का दो हो जाएगा. So it can become from एक का दो or it can become from दो का एक. So they say it's very easy to become a lakpati in crypto market. Yes, I say that is true. If you are a crorepati, it's very easy to become a lakpati. Coming to the next part, that is correlation. The table 3 correlation gives us an idea about the price movements between these 5 selected cryptocurrencies, and it indicates that Ethereum is the correlation between Ethereum and Bitcoin is the highest, that is 0.78. But one point which is worth noting is that all of these correlation values are positive, which means that in the last 1 year at least, all of them have moved in one direction, and that is northwards. I'm sorry. Just a moment. Yeah. Now I would like to conclude by showing this diagram. When Bitcoin was worth $4,000 and it was offered, people said no. 9,000, people said no. 16, they continued to say no. But when it came to $30,000, everybody said, yes, I want all the Bitcoins. And that was because there was too much of hype which was created by media, social media, as well as our regular media. Now, why is it that at 30,000 people are saying that, yes, I want? Because we know in scam, most of us would have watched, and in the share market, Bhav Bhagwan Che, which means this is a Gujarati saying, which in English translates as price is supreme. So anything which has price is valuable. But one thing at the same time, what we need to keep in mind is the cryptocurrencies have no intrinsic values as such. It's only price, it's only how much people are talking about it that is changing the direction of the prices of these currencies. So, but yes, Bhav Bhagwan che, with that, I would just like to end by saying that cryptocurrencies, you may love them, you may hate them, but you cannot ignore them. Why? Because cryptocurrency is not a bubble, it is here to stay. And therefore, our title, I mean, we would like to conclude that we cannot ignore it. These are the references for our paper. And thank you. Any questions, please?
Scientific field that address all aspects of change in the global society and the modern economy. Nowadays, change has become a more universal and important social and organizational phenomena. Modern society has implemented countries change as an essential norms to maintain efficiency, profitability, and stability. All organizations need to be provide their then react negatively to change. Technology and change have a hug impact on every aspect of our life, including education. Educational institutions are undoubtedly are important part of these whole process. Educational institutions are facing major cultural, demographic, and above all technological changes. What we are seeing nowadays. Today's teachers are facing new methods of teachings in the digital age that efficiently incorporate technology into the educational environment. The authors of the article discuss the issues of the change of management. It is impact on learning and educational practices and experiences in the digital age. In this context, the method of content analysis of relevant document is applied, as well as the result of previous theoretical and empirical research of many scientists and researchers in this area. The obtained findings are a suitable starting point for future action in the framework of educational activities, policies, and approaches. Okay. And my keywords are transformation in management, management changes, and educational changes, and teaching in the digital age, and modern economy learning process. Okay, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
My name is Shani. I'm from PG Department of Social Work under the guidance of Ms. Ellen Shah Daina. Firstly, I'm going to explain about my topic. My topic is the study on economic challenge faced by housewives in this pandemic. Firstly, COVID-19 is a pandemic that has affected economically directly and caused a serious implication all over the global and brought about the world to a standstill with unprecedented changes in our society and economy. As has been the cause, the novel coronavirus spread with such a speed and indeed across the world due to the interconnected of the globalized world that most countries imposed. With the closure of our education institution and the simultaneously emerging norm of work from home. During the lockdown, we realized that women very much more vulnerable. And later on that, the study was focused on difficult faced by housewives and also the analyze the mindset of the housewife on various problems faced by them economically. The presented study is connected in the Chennai district, and the sample size is 25 housewives, and the research is based on the descriptive in the nature. Okay. And coming to my introduction part, the COVID-19 pandemic as a hurricane evoked across the world and brought the world to standstill with unprecedented changes in our society and economy. As I said before that, the novel coronavirus spread with such a speed and intensity across the world due to the interconnectedness of the globalized world that most countries imposed temporarily shutdowns as a strategy to continue in speed. The term unpaid work, as given by the International Labour Organization, in the non-remunerated work carried out to sustain the well-being and maintenance of other individuals in households. The International Labour Organization estimate shows that time spent in unpaid work accounted for 16.4 billion hours per day, with women contributed more than 3/4 of the total. The existing literature explains the generated nature of unpaid work and its disproportionate burden on women, namely the economic prescriptive and the gender prescriptive. And coming to a review of literature point of view, I have took lot of review authors review, but I have presented here only one review, that is addressing work balance challenges of a working woman during a COVID-19 in Bangladesh, published during this lockdown period. Yeah. And coming to the research methodology, major part of the research was research methodology. I have followed my research methodology to the non-profitable mode, that same as quantitative method. In that, I have took a convincing sampling method. I have took just 25 samples only. Due to this pandemic, I can't able to took more samples, so I have took only 25 housewife reviews. And then coming to my data analysis and interpretation. Data analysis and interpretation, I have found that I have found that major the response age group belongs to 25 to 34%, 25 to 34 age respondents, and then major of the response that affected economically due to this COVID, there are 92% are affected economically, and that 72% of response that get unemployment due to this COVID, and 76% of them struggled due to the basic needs, and then some of them are affected by the domestic violence during COVID. And most of the respondents have responded that they have also affected by heavy household work and by paying the children's fees and housing rent, where they all face so much difficult in that cases. And I have some suggestion point in my review. That suggestion points are can be given, or the unpaid women need some monthly income for them and their family. The government has to take some arrangements for housewife women to get monthly income by taking free classes on tailoring, embroidering, cooking, beautician, etc., and free education to teach their children to make self decision and to be brave in a difficult situation in their life. And the house owners have to reduce the housing rent in this pandemic, and they have no income in this pandemic. The house owners, most of the house owners have troubling the housewives to pay the rent. So this is all. This is my suggestion to the house owners, and one more suggestion to the school owners. Most of the school owners also trouble the parents to pay the school fees in this pandemic. Due to their uneducated, they are faced a lot of domestic violence from their husbands, mother-in-law. So they have to educate. So the government have to take some steps to the housewives. And finally, coming to the conclusion point, my paper has highlighted the impact of COVID-19 on gender inequality, especially on burden of work from women. The paper shows that women were already sharing a higher burden of unpaid work, and COVID-19 and the concept of a lockdown has worked to exacerbate the existing gender inequalities and increase their burden of unpaid work even more. Among women, marital status and unemployed women and are the key determinants of the woman burden of unpaid work, where time spent on unpaid has increased the highest of for married women and unpaid women who were already spending the highest time on each work even before the lockdown. Yeah, these are some reference I have taken. Thank you.
Thank you so much.